Hello, and welcome back to the Ask the Color Expert podcast. Today, my special guest is Sophia Hyde. She is a life coach, speaker, and author of the book Unleash Your Favorite Self with an accompanying journal. I'm so excited to have her here today. She is amazing. I am in the middle of reading her book and loving it. And there's so many morsels of goodness in here for all of you hairstylists that you absolutely need to hear. So welcome, Sophia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited for us to have this chat. I love hairstylists. It's in my DNA. My mom was one. And let's be real. A lot of you guys behind the chair are also life coaching your clients. And so we have a lot in common.
1000%. It's interesting because oh my gosh, I guess it was like my 30th year of doing hair. I actually was certified to be a life coach for that very reason. I went to a public speaking program that was for hairstylists that want to be platform artists. That was always a goal of mine. So I went to this program and, I think they're going to be teaching me how to stand, how to not say and all the hesitation words. And it was so much more because one of the co-hosts of the event is a life coach. And I'm sitting there the whole first day going, what in the world why are we talking about these things? But the whole goal was that if you don't understand yourself and understand your interactions with other people and emotional intelligence and all of those things, you don't come across as an authority in front of a crowd. They want to hear your story. They want that story connection. And you know that because you're a speaker. So I just found that so interesting, and so much so that I want it to be a life coach because I teach hairstylists, and what better way to get to know people's emotional, thoughts and feelings at the time of being taught something new, and that there's so many different styles of learning. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
But what made me really want to have you on here, what stood out to me is in your little bio that I saw, it said with ADHD. And I was like, okay, bingo, we need her because a life coach with ADHD is our people.
Yes. It's my superpower. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 34 and I'm 37 now. So I am one of those adult diagnosed women. And when I first, I was listening to this entrepreneur, like super successful entrepreneur woman, and she kept describing like making reels and talking about her ADHD. And I was like, I do all that. I do that. I do that. I do that. Um, and I was like, I think I have this woman's brain. And the first time I got tested, I was like, she like linked some test thing to like, see if you want to know and try this thing. And I was off the charts. And I remember when I first did that test, I thought my only correlation to ADHD was when I was a camp counselor at the YMCA in circa 2001. This wild child had ADHD, and she was like the most difficult person in the whole camp, and they put her in my little group of 10 to take care of. And I just, every time I thought of a girl with ADHD, I thought of this very challenging child, and I was like, that's not me. And anyways, the more I learned about it in the brain, I am like, dude, this is my genius. Now I have to rein it in. I have to understand how my brain works. I have to take care of it. But my life for the last 3 years has gotten so much better since I got diagnosed and have learned how to properly care for myself and meet my needs in a different way. And I actually freaking love being ADHD. And over half my clients are, because I think they're just naturally attracted to people who like get their executive function problems and like, please help me organize my life. Yes. So after I got diagnosed, we figured out it's like inherited. So my mom definitely has it for sure. And then both my siblings. So now we understand, like, this is why my husband, who is this calm, chill dude, walked into my life at 18 and was like, your family is a lot. Like, y'all are loud and everybody talks over each other and it's so intense. And fast forward 20 years, it's like, oh, that's because you married out of a family of 5. 4 of them have ADHD. That probably is pretty intense to walk into that house.
And when you're around it all the time, like my brother and I both have it, my son has it. when you're around it. And that, like you say, I always say it's my superpower because I can get a lot done. And I call myself a multi-potentialite because I can have so many different passions and so many balls in the air and keep them all up in the air.
Yeah.
Where I think if I reined it in too much and, squashed it down too much, that I wouldn't be who I am, and I wouldn't, I would take away my personality. So I do love it. And I do think that it's a superpower. And I think everybody's born with some kind of something. And I do love it. So in the book, I'm reading the book. I just went to a little getaway. It was like a 1 day overnight retreat. And the first thing I did was grab my Kindle because in regular life, I wanted to have finished your book by the time you and I got on the podcast so that we could really get into it. But it's probably better because I would give away 90% of the book if I knew more. But I'm about halfway through it and there's so many nuggets, and I wanted to make sure that I shared them with the listener. The biggest one that stood out to me, and the thing that I share with my audience, is that I am a recovering shoulder. I
Yeah.
say, you should do this to get busier in the salon, and you should do that, and you should. And I'm always telling my husband, you should, and my son, you should. And
Yeah.
people get very defensive when you're shoulding all over them. So that is a work in progress. And I
Have you
love that
done
you
the could
talked about
exchange? Like, have you learned that you just all you have to do is just change the word to could? Have you done that?
could makes a huge difference. And
Yeah.
I love that. It's like a softer, definitely a softer approach. But I also am at a point in my life where, and I think that's part of the life coaching piece. I think once you know better, you can't help but try and should on everyone else because you know how much easier life can be when you understand the, emotional intelligence side of things. But it's their journey and it's not for me. They're not hiring
Yeah.
me as a coach
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
shut all over them. So that's where if someone now I've matured enough to say, are you open to some feedback?
Sure.
And after reading your book saying you could try this instead of you should, I think
Yeah.
is
The reason the book is called Unleash Your Favorite Self is because I think we live in a society that's constantly shitting on us in every way. And sure, I think the more I do some therapy, the more I figure out that I might have ended up writing a book called Unleash Your Favorite Self because of shocker, my childhood and how I grew up and how I was talked to, like, the church I grew up in. And like, I was just shitted on so much between like family norms and cultural norms and academia that I was in and religion that I was in. And so there was just everywhere in my life, there were all these boxes of how I was supposed to be. And now that I know about ADHD, it's like no wonder that stuff was so stressful and hard for me and wasn't going to work for me because I'm really creative and open-minded and and I ask lots of questions and I'm jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. I'm like, I'm not going to stay in the same lane for 30 years. And one of the greatest things where I was like, I could definitely commit to being a life coach is because since I own my own business, I can change it up. The first year we did 20-minute coaching calls. The second year I did only 1 hour coaching calls. The third year I've got a little bit of a mix of both. And I added some groups. It's like every year when I'm like, okay, this is boring. Now let's change it. Like I can, but I'm always just keep helping people. I needed that. I need this like variety, it's like the more I know myself, the more I can meet my own needs. And I can see now how I had already named my business Your Favorite Self. And part of where, before I wrote my book and before I found out I was ADHD, and I think part of this, the reason that felt so much better to me was all around us in society. The language in the personal growth and development space for so long has been living your best life, be the best version of yourself. Or here's all this coaching and resources and books on how to be successful. But the problem with that language is whether we want it to be different or not, we cannot help in our brains that we've been trained around what that is supposed to mean, meaning success. Come on. All of our brains immediately just saw either money or cars or a house or something material. Like we cannot help but associate success with material possessions. And even though we might say, oh, but I know it's not that, and we can all have our own different success, like the language itself is done. Like the society, English language, America, whatever, like our brains are stuck there. And then the best version of yourself. One of the reasons that bothers me is because it I think it's going to lead to, whether we want it to or not, guilting ourselves and shaming ourselves, because there are days where we're just not going to be our best self. For example, can your best self spend all day Sunday laid up on the couch watching Netflix and eating pizza and maybe some ice cream without feeling bad about yourself? And I'm not really sure, because I think we might shame ourselves. Or we're laying there being like, does this my best self, like not exercising, eating all these calories? I'm not really sure. Should I have spent 8 hours on Netflix today? But your favorite self, this is why I love favorite, because favorite cannot have any shitting at all on it. Because
Mm.
the one thing that favorite means is that you have to tell us what it is. You have to declare it. You have to define it. Nobody can shit on you, because if you go, this is my favorite ice cream, what are we going to do? Argue about that? Like, how can I argue with you about your favorite ice cream? That's your taste buds. Like, it is, you just declare it. And so when it comes to our lives, living your favorite life means I have to tell you what it is, because I am completely in charge of the definition, and there is no connotation. Your brain cannot automatically start thinking about what that means, because it means it's in the power of the person. And so that is why that's why I named my business Favorite Self Coaching. It is why this word resonates with me. It's why I titled my book that way, because it is all about that the shoulds that we have just been buried in our lives.
I love that. And the best life, to your point about the religion you grew up in, the household you grew up in, it's best according to whom.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everyone has an opinion on what your best self is, but in the end, it's really all that matters is what you think, because I always say we're born naked and alone and we die naked and alone. It's like we worry so much about what everybody else is doing, thinking, comparing all of the things, but in the end, it's really just you and your journey and what it means to you. And I always call the decade of the 50s, which I am still in, luckily, the FU 50s, because once you hit 50, you start being like, you know what? I don't really care what you think that I should do for my job. And I don't care what you think my hours should be, or that I'm off on Saturday. Like, as a hairdresser, closing on Saturdays, you would have thought that I stole someone's kidney on the street corner. Like, people were like, how can you do that? I'm like, because it's my business and I want to work Monday through Friday. I'm still putting the same amount of hours in. I'm still just as productive, but I miss so much time with my children that
Mm-hmm.
I was like, enough. They're growing up quicker
Yeah.
than
And
I
the clients will
anticipated.
find you that want you.
Yeah.
And the clients that need a Saturday hairstylist will find somebody else.
Yes. Another thing I loved in your book was about, how we, to that vein of what we're talking about, you're always thinking that other people are judging you or having thoughts about maybe what you're wearing, or, as a hairdresser, do you have the look of a hairdresser? Are you portraying that to your clients? Whatever it is, we're always looking for approval. And in the book, you said, whichever version of you enters a room, you will always have one hater, two admirers, and seven who don't care. So isn't it easier to just find your 20%? I teach a lot to the Pareto rule of the 80-20 rule, and I've taught my kids, in life, when you get out there and you're finding your way in your career, you think you have all of this competition and there's so many people out there that you're trying to, get promotions and all that stuff. But really, in reality, in any workplace, 20%, like the 80% of the productivity is coming from 20% of the people. Most people are on autopilot, just in survival mode. So when you look at it that way, it's so much less intimidating that, if you really are, caring about what you're doing and putting your best foot forward, you're only competing with a very small amount of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggled with people pleasing for my whole life. I just really wanted to be liked. That mattered to me. And again, hashtag ADHD. I didn't know until my learning about my diagnosis and what it means. I didn't know about rejection sensitivity. So, part of the way our brains are wired is we are more sensitive to people not liking us. That feeling of rejection, we take it more personal, and it is literally how our brains are wired. And the thing that helped me the most, it's actually a Jewish proverb, is where that those numbers came from. But I quoted the exact language that they used in the book. But my interpretation is that okay, only 20% of the people are going to like me, are going to love me. It's like, where am I going to put my attention? Because what you focus on grows. Where you give your attention, they call it paying attention for a reason, right? You pay attention, meaning it's commerce. We talk about how you only have so much time, you only have so much money, but you know what you really don't have a lot of is where are you giving your attention? And so out of 10 people, I cannot give my attention to everybody. And do you know how much of my attention I wasted trying to figure out it would just depend on the situation. But there are plenty of times that I wanted that person who did not like me to like me, right? So sometimes I was giving it to that 10%. They were getting way too much of my attention, the thoughts, my headspace, like I wanted them to like me, or how can I be different to get them to like me? And I gave way too much of my energy and my attention and my precious thought time to the 70%. People who just saw me as a warm body. It's like I wanted to be in their friend group, or I wanted to be in their circle, or I wanted to be invited to the thing, or whatever it was. Like I was like, notice me. I want you to see me. I want you to understand me, whatever. And the truth was, I was just a person, I'm just a warm body over here to them. And that's okay. Because then I realized I need to focus my attention on my 20%. So I'm going to go into a room and I'm going to shine my light, and it's going to be bright. I realize my light is really intense. And so if people have a problem with it, they can put on sunglasses. Like it's no longer my concern. And so I'm going to shine my light. It's going to be bright. It's going to be intense. And you know what? I was, I always thought I was too much. So I would like wear the lampshade. No, actually it's true. I am too much. I am too much for a lot of people. And if I am too much for you, you're just not in my 20%. And I'm so okay with that, because I cannot dim my light when there are people in darkness, when there are people in the shadows. It takes a bright light to reach them. And so I was designed this way. I was made intense for some reason. And the people that are looking for this vibe, like the brighter I shine, the more easy it is for them to find, right? It's like a lighthouse. And so I have to shine brightly. I have to be myself. And the problem is with this 80% and 20% and whatever, is when you are a different version of yourself, the math still maths. Meaning, when I was walking around as this lampshaded version of myself, there was still the one person that didn't like me, and the 70 that thought I was neutral, and the 20 that liked me, or 20%. And I was attracting people into my life who did not want a bright person, right? Because I was letting them see the lampshaded version. So then when I would lift the lampshade up a little bit, it was like, whoa, and so I'm getting this like feedback that's not helpful feedback, right? Because I'm coming from the wrong people. And so when I really did let the lampshade off and say, this is who I am, and this is what I think, and this is what I believe, and this is how I show up in the world, it did come at a cost, because I had to filter out those people who I had attracted from the less authentic version of me, who didn't really want to be in relationship with this version of Sophia. And then those people found me. There were people over there. I don't know that any of my haters came around, but for sure, some of those 70%, that 7 and 10 who just think you're a warm body, when I started truly showing up, some of those people that I was just an acquaintance or whatever to were like, OMG, what is she up to? I want to be around that, right? Suddenly the magnetic shifts, it was just like, it's all just magnets, right? And so it started shifting, and they started being like, oh, Sophia's changing. She's growing. I want more of that. So as I shifted, it all kind of shuffled, and I did that, right? Like I attracted people who weren't the right energy for me, because I wasn't being my true self. And so when you said earlier, like you said this thing, like the way a hairstylist is supposed to dress or look. And I thought to myself, when you said that sentence, I was like, what the hell does that mean? Because when I think of hairstylists, I think of like funky people being themselves. You've got the ones in all black. You got the ones with different hair colors. You've got the ones that look straight out of a Barbie doll magazine. Like you've got all these different vibes. You've got the like super fun gay guy. You've got, I don't know. You just have all the things. And I'm like, there's a way that hairstylists are supposed to dress. I think a hairstylist should dress at their favorite self. Like that is it. What kind of clothes do you like to wear? How do you like to do your hair? How do you like to do your nails? Like whatever the thing is, I think the only way to dress is as your favorite self because anything else doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I did have, I'm blanking on what's the thing that you get done where it's like human design. I had my human design chart done.
Oh, I love
And
me
to
some
your
human design.
point, I was, because I'm such a shooter and I'm always trying to tell people like, oh, you have to meet my life coach. Oh, you have to meet this one. I'm always trying to connect people to have them get rid of the fears and the doubts and all of the things. And I love that about myself. I love that I'm always connecting people and pushing them a little bit out of their comfort zone, but
Are
kind
you a
of
5?
a little bit of a bully way. I don't even remember. I would have to have my
Oh, okay.
chart. But the person that did my reading said, Elaine, that's what you were born to do. That is who you are. Like people are brought into your life at any given time because they are stuck being who they are. And you're not afraid to tell them that this is what you see in them. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
but I feel like people don't like me because I'm always pointing out to them the things that they need to
Yeah.
lose the fear of and they're still terrified. And she's like,
Mhm.
don't stop doing that. And that was just such a relief because it's something that every year I would journal that I wanted to change about myself. You know,
Oh, yeah, but
people
accepting who
to
you
do,
are.
yeah. And I'm like, you know what? Now to your point, I'm just like, I will start with, are you open to feedback? My daughter made me start doing that because she's very conscious of all those things. And she's like, Mom, if you ask people, it'll be much more well received. Don't just put it on them. I'm like, okay. So now I do that. And I have had people, that I turned off and left my life in whatever way, like if they were an employee or whatever our relationship was. And literally 2 to 3 years later, I will get a random letter or flowers or a phone call saying, I really did not like you when you were giving that tough love. But once I could see that it was out of love that you did that, thank you. And they made progress. So my husband, this is supposed to make me feel good. He says, well, you may not be invited to a party every weekend while you're alive, but you're going to have a really crowded funeral and a kick-ass eulogy because you're gonna
I
realize
love
like
it.
years later, I'm like, well, okay, but I'm not here for that.
I've
Go
had
get
the
to-
same thing happen so many times. I don't know, have you ever had this one happen? This has happened to me many times, where someone will say, when we were coworkers 15 years ago. This is one that's popping in my head first. Is this girl? We were coworkers 15 years ago. She says, you know, I didn't like 15 years ago. It really hurt my feelings when you said this, but it turns out you were really right. And she goes, you really made me think. You said to me, my gosh, why are you always in chaos? You're like the only person I've seen who just has moves from one chaos to another. Are you like, do you just like it here in the chaos or are you attracting it to your life? Like, why do you just move from one chaotic thing to another? And I got a pit in my stomach because clearly like 22-year-old Sophia felt comfortable saying that. 37-year-old Sophia has turned off a lot of people by speaking so bluntly, and I wouldn't quite say it the same way anymore. And I said, oh my gosh, I said that to you that bluntly. And she goes, yeah, but I needed to hear it. I was living and I was creating all this drama for myself. But you said that and it did make me mad, but it woke me up to the fact that I was kind of responsible for all of this. And that's when I started like making changes. And, then there was like more of this. And I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I've had so many people say to me, well, one time you said to me blank, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that came out of my mouth. And I'm just like, oh, just want that's also the ADHD, right? Like we have this word vomit and we just like can't put it back in. We're just like, oh gosh. But yeah, sometimes it is actually helpful. It's what people sometimes need and
And
it takes us to say it.
doesn't it dumbfound you though, that people hold on to words like that? Like people will tell me, I wrote a book for hairstylists and I wrote it probably 8 years ago, something like that. And I had a student come and do a one-on-one with me, and she goes, well, you say in your book, and she'd quote it. And then she's like, and then you said on your coffee chat, and she quoted something else they said on the coffee. I'm thinking, I said it, and I don't even remember what she's talking about, but it stuck with her all these years. And it's hard to not start to hold back a little and say, wow, if people are really holding on to something that I'm saying, the crap that I blurt out is a little scary sometimes with the ADHD and the no filter that, my husband and I were just talking about, how the world is now and how everybody sues everybody for everything. He's like, oh my gosh, some of the stuff that you've said to clients and to your employees, he's like, Thank God the world was not that uptight. I'm like, I know. But it's, people really, I had a girl quit working for me because I insulted her boyfriend at the time. He wasn't her husband. We went to a hair show, and when she came back, he bought her an outfit. And I said, "Oh, my girlfriend works for that company." And she said, "You know what? It is not good. Like, they charge a whole lot of money, but it's quality on par with like Kmart or something." And it was probably me being jealous because my husband would never go and buy me an outfit when I'm away. And I just blurted it out at dinner, not even thinking. And she stopped working for me because of that sentence. And when she told me, I was like, couldn't you just come to me and say that was a really bitchy thing to say, and talk to me about it? Like, don't leave your job over one sentence. But it's that sensitivity that I was not aware of, because we're all in our own little bubble. I'm in my own little bubble of ADHD, and I'm not even thinking that what I'm saying is making that kind of impact. It's a little frightening.
Yeah. 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 You haven't made it to the contribution spoke yet. As you said, you read the first half. Wait till you get to the contribution spoke. Because I talk about how the biggest contribution that we can leave the world is actually to do our own work and work on our own shit. Because
And speaking of spokes, I do have written in my notes that I want you to talk about the favorite life wheel. January is such a, I want to work on everything, and you get
yeah.
so overwhelmed. And I love that you had it in a circle. And I've done work like that at retreats. I love to do like an annual retreat, and they always have you, grade yourself in each area. And every single time I do the circle, my weak spot that doesn't get enough attention is me and my health. So this year
Mm.
on January 1st, I happened to be at an event, and I said, this is the only spoke I've never dealt with. I just keep giving, doing, and helping others. And I've never really put my own self care first, because I have equated self care as selfish. Somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was Catholic school, it became like, if you keep putting yourself first, you're not being a good person. You're not helping everybody else. You're just worried about yourself. So it was a negative for me. And now I'm having the best January I've ever had, because I'm doing things that I want to do and I don't feel bad about it. And it's very invigorating. It's a shame I waited 56 years to get there.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah, in the self-care. So, okay, going back to the favorite life wheel. The coach training that I went through was actually based on the wheel. And I picked that. I picked the training that I went through, which was, if you've ever heard of Zig Ziglar, I went through the Ziglar program, and I chose them because they teach the wheel philosophy. But they have 7 spokes on their wheel. And the more I coached people, the more it didn't resonate right for me anymore. And so that's when I developed my own wheel, which I did not, I mean, the wheel has been around, and I put this history in the book. It's been around since like the 1960s, like the first person to like come up with this concept to look at all these different areas of our lives. But there's just been many variations along the way. And as I was developing my coaching practice, I realized that I needed it to match the experiences that I was having with my clients. And that's where I came up with these 10 spokes, the 10th one being blank. So it's customizable. That was really important, because one thing I just kept seeing was everybody's life is a little bit different, and we need room for that variation. And so I have 9 spokes that I present, and then a 10th one that is different for every client. And in those 9 spokes, one of them is self-care. And I'll just go ahead and read them for the listeners, because then they can know the book. We introduce the wheel. So there's the intro chapter. Then I explain the wheel, how it works. You can do the assessment. And if you buy the journal with it, you can just color it in nice and pretty in your journal. And then we go through self-care, mind, body, spiritual, financial, career, family, friendship, contribution, and then that blank spoke. And the reason all of these areas matter is because when one is doing well, it will lift the others. But when one is crashing, it will pull down the others. And you mentioned you struggle with self-care. I have found the 2 most powerful spokes on the wheel are self-care and the mind spoke. That's why they're first. It's why I led with them, because I put self-care first for a reason, because I know most people don't finish books that they start. And so if they were only going to get through a little bit of the book, let them read the self-care spoke, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And I don't believe that self-care is all this pampering stuff. Self-care is your energy management. How are your energy levels? Are you tired? Are you burnt out? Do you have energy to expand? How are you How are you doing in your boundaries? Do you, like, to me, one of the biggest things we do in our self-care is set boundaries. And I give the visual in the book, I give the visual of a kitchen sink. So if energy is the thing that is pouring, the water pouring from the kitchen sink, pouring from the faucet, then are you a colander, a bowl, or a measuring cup? Because a colander is the energy, it's coming in and going right out, meaning you are always at empty. You as you restore and deplete on a constant basis. So you are just always pouring from an empty cup. It is completely unsustainable. And I'm not trying to exaggerate or anything, but it will land you in the hospital. Like
Mhm.
that level of operation, your body cannot sustain it. You will crash. And how good are you to the people around you if you're in the hospital for 10 days? Like this is everybody else now in your community, in your village. Your clients are having to reschedule. You're out of a paycheck. People are helping you financially. Like this is it's a problem. It suddenly becomes everybody's problem when
Mhm.
you crash. Okay. And then a measuring cup, it's exhausting because it's pour in, pour out, pour in, pour out, pour in, pour out. And so that can look like, if you've got listeners here who haven't figured out the right science to the schedule of the hours they need to work, which by the way is going to be different for every single person. Some of them might need 3 12-hour days. Some of them they might do great on 7 4-hour days. Like I can work every day, but just for 4 hours. Like that's what I got. Who knows? Everybody is different, but you got to find what works for you. And if you're trying to do like you know, 2 days off and it's not working for you, it's like you're crashing for 2 days, filling the measuring cup up, and then you pour out for 5 and now it's back to empty and you're refilling. That is exhausting. And I preach, be a overflowing bowl. Like imagine if you just sit the bowl in the sink and you leave it there running. And so then the bowl fills up, then it overflows, the rest goes down the drain. You are an overflowing bowl. And what that means is you are pouring out to others from your abundance, from your overflow. And that is such a generous place to be giving because guess what? The same amount of water is still going down the kitchen sink. So, like, everybody is still getting what they want
Right,
from you. They're
yeah.
getting their haircuts, your family's getting their needs met, but you aren't doing it in a depleted way. So, they're getting a better version of you. And should a crisis happen, should an emergency happen, guess what? You're not going to be in the hospital. You're actually going to be helpful because you have a reserve. So sometimes you do have to go into survival mode and you have to take a couple weeks where you're just going for it for whatever reason is going on. And then you can get back to refilling your bowl up. But if you are already an empty cup or you are already a colander, then when you actually have a real problem, when you have a real crisis, you are not helpful. So anyways, that's my self-care rant.
I love the rant and I love the visual because I spent 30 plus years as 100% colander, push, 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 all the push energy, all the crazy hours, going in early, staying late, no lunch, no dinner, just on the run all the time. And I know what being in the hospital randomly for those things looks like. And I probably spent the last maybe 3.5 years as the measuring cup. And now I am finally in the bowl version that you just
Beautiful.
said. Finally. Um, it was not easy to get there because like I said, you're so accustomed to doing for others and worrying about others that it almost feels like some days I'm like, I feel like I'm forgetting to do something because I was such a caretaker. And when I take that off my plate, I'm like, wait, I can actually sit down and read Sophia's book right now and nobody knows anything else. Like it's so foreign to me. I have an entire bookshelf here to my left of every single book is leadership, all work related, nothing feel good or fill my cup or just trashy novel that, can take me to another place. And so now my daughter, it was so nice yesterday. I got a big package in the mail. I'm like, I don't remember ordering anything. And I opened it up and a handwritten note, thought you would like some of these. And it was books that she's moving out of her apartment. So instead of getting rid of
Oh.
them, she threw them in a box for me. And I was like, oh, now I need to make sure that I take some more time to read. So I'm enjoying the place that I'm in, but I guarantee you, Sophia, 99 out of 100 people listening to this podcast right now are full on colander. Like it's
Okay.
just,
I'm going to talk to you guys. Okay. The colander folks. Couple of things for you. Number one, You mentioned human design earlier.
Mhm.
And I'm going to just give a plug to let you guys know that a couple weeks ago on my podcast, I interviewed a human design expert. And I want you to start there because it teaches human design teaches us our energy flow. Okay. And so I am a generator, and that taught me that my energy works on a 24-hour cycle. But if you have any projectors or manifestors, one of my best friends is a manifester. And until she quit working to stay home with her two kids, she was a hairstylist. And a manifester can never, at any point in their life, work on a 24-hour schedule. It just, they have a burst, right? So that means that they're like highly creative and they like go, but then they have to retreat and pull away. Two really famous examples of manifestors are Adele and Taylor Swift. Have you ever noticed that Adele disappears for like 3 years? Then she
Mhm.
drops an album and she's everywhere. She's on every interview, every screen. She's all over the place. We're all talking about her music. And then she disappears for several years. We're not talking about her music anymore. And then it's the only thing we're talking about is this go. Okay. So understanding your energy type is going to teach you how to manage your schedule. So that's why I said earlier, like some of you guys might need to work 3 days a week, 5 days a week. Some of you might even be fine working 7 days a week, but on these like weird hours that work for you. There's
Mhm.
not a right or wrong way. This 40-hour schedule that, I mean, I know
Yeah, you
hairstylists
made that
don't,
up.
yeah, but this 9 to 5 stuff, it was invented by capitalism through like negotiation with the labor union because they were trying to work people to, to death. And so it was like the Ford Motor, I forget which one, I might be wrong, but I think it was like Ford Motor Company and the labor union. And so they negotiated and they invented this 8-hour day, 5 days a week. By the way, for the men who had women at home full time taking
Like
care
that's
of
so
the house
funny.
and the kids. So what they agreed on was that one person in the house can work. If you, this is to those of you who might have partners and children. They agreed that one person in the house could work 40 hours a week, and then the other person is full time taking care of everything else, and that is the balance. And how many people do you know with one person working only 40 hours a week and the other person full time taking care of all the domestic parts of life? I can't think, nobody's popping up in mind right now. Like
Right.
everybody is either two incomes, or if one person's working, they're surely putting in more than 40. Like this is not, our society is just crazy. So anyways, all that to say, this is why I love the favorite self concept, because your schedule doesn't have to have a right or a wrong way. And so I'm not going to get on here and preach this solution like, hey, all you guys, the answer is 25 hours. That's what you need. Work 25 hours, charge appropriately. It's going to be great. I don't know. I don't know, and also pay attention in the journal. I do this exercise for the self-care spoke where I tell you to, I recommend that you get out a sheet of paper. Well, if you buy the journal, it's already there for you. But if you don't have the journal, just get a sheet of paper, put a line down the middle, 2 columns, what restores me, what depletes me. And I want you to pay attention because as a hairstylist, you might find working weddings completely drains me, but doing color, love it all day long. Or you'll be the opposite. You'll be like, I love the events and it changes and it's fun and all the families and I get to see all the people and I can make so much money in one Saturday versus, having to be in the salon all day. Who knows? Like you guys are each going to have your own businesses. Do you like the cuts? Are you like, you know what? I don't, you can see I'm a brunette who's just been a solid brunette for so long. Okay, sidetrack, but I think you guys will enjoy this. This is not related, but it's related. Because my mom was a colorist, she started experimenting on my hair colors when I was like 3. So she would invent colors on my hair, sit me in the salon. And then that's what she would sell to her clients because they would come in and they'd be like, oh my God, I want hair like your daughter's. So my mom would play with my hair. And then as I got older, I was the only kid in elementary school that got to have dyed hair. So I had highlights, I tried red, I tried blonde. And so then by the time I was an adult, I was like, no, I'm a brunette. I love my natural hair color. I have been the boring, solid brunette. My friends that are hairstylists have tried giving me highlights, and I'm like, this is exhausting to keep up with. Just cover the grays. I'm done. But I think it's because I got all the funsies out of me as a child.
Right.
So anyways, digress, but they might find that like the thing that restores them and depletes them is different. And so you might be able to work a 50 or 60 hour a week, not sustainably, but like it might not be a big deal if all you're doing is the thing that you love. But
Absolutely.
if you're trying to work in all week in the salon and then take weddings on the weekends and you hate the weddings, you are going to be in constant burnout and misery. So you just want to build a life that you love. And like in my mom's example, she figured out that she loves color and she hated the cuts. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Sorry, total thing. What I was going to say is because I'm so boring, I actually don't know the names of any of the cool stuff people are doing these days. But like, what is something that's really time consuming that people are having done to their hair right now?
Right now, well, they're kind of getting away from this silver gray trend. That was an all day project, but it's more lived in color with root shadows and melts. And the average blonde service now is like 4 to 5 hours where it used to be an hour. So
Okay.
everything has
So
like,
let's do the average blonde service. That one. Okay. Some of you listening to this are completely obsessed with this trend and you love it. And I saw somebody on Instagram the other day who tagged her, she's a blonde, and she tagged her hairstylist. And the hairstylist Instagram name was something along the lines of like the blonde stylist, meaning 100% of this woman's clientele were blondes. And she had nothing. I went to her Instagram. All the pictures were blonde people. She loves working with the blondes. So guess what? Her entire business is built with these 4 and 5 hour treatments because she's really good at it and she's mastered it. But some of you listening roll your eyes over this trend and you're like, here we go. Here's another one. This is so exhausting. Guess what? You could actually just start focusing on attracting more of the clients that you want. So advertise wherever you're posting on Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, whatever you're doing these days, talk about, show more of what you want to attract and steer away from the thing that you find exhausting. Like that is part of how you'll be able to build a sustainable business if you're just doing the thing that you love because it'll energize you more.
well, it goes back to what we started with, where you said, just keep going after your 20%. The people that
Yes.
love you and love what you do,
Yes.
then you just get to do what you love, and everybody wins. I'm a manifesting generator, so I'm a little complicated. That's
Yeah,
why
no, that just means you
go,
have to
go, go.
experiment and have fun. And I'm a generator. And so we have a lot in common, which means that both of us thrive if we just have more fun in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was my word at the last retreat. They went around the circle and said, what is your word? And I said, joyful. I want to be joyful. I want to be little girl giggly joyful this year. That's the goal.
Beautiful.
And I'm
Love it.
starting it with your book. So, Sophia, everyone listening needs to hear about and read your book. So tell them how they can get in touch with you, buy your book. How can they get more Sophia in their life?
Yes, y'all come connect with me. I hope that y'all are on Instagram because that's like the one place I show up. So you can go, my website is sophiahyde.com, but I am on Instagram the most. And so it's at the Sophia Hyde. And in my bio link, you can find all the things. So I have a podcast, I have the book, the journal. I have an app you can download to get some free resources to if any of you guys are struggling with time management and figuring out how to run your schedule. On my app, you can get some time management help on there. There's a mini course with some tips for you there. Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. Slide into my DMs because obviously, since I'm ADHD, I get dopamine hits off of meeting new people and talking to people and love conversations. So you are welcome to come slide in and tell me you listened to this and whatever you loved from it. You can say hi. And yeah, that's where I'm at. The Sophia Hyde at Instagram.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. You are adorable. I loved our time together. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
everybody, for listening. We will see you on the next one.
Bye.